Okay, we're going to make a start as it's 10 o'clock on a bit of a time schedule, so I'm just going to crack on. Right, first of all, before we start into the proceedings of the day, I just want to go through a little bit of health and safety for everybody. There is no planned fire drills for this morning or this afternoon. Okay, so if the fire alarm happens to go off, you need to be vacating the building. Okay, so please, through the exits, find the building exits, okay, vacate the building and congregate away from the fire if there is a fire. Any questions? Good. Mobile phones, if you have your mobile phones, please ensure that they're switched off or they're on silent so there's no sort of uncomfortable interruptions or anything like that. I'll be grateful if you could do that now. And then finally, throughout the day, you may see there's people handling cameras, still cameras and stuff like that, which means that you are going to be videoed and photographed throughout the day. If you do not wish to be in any of the footage on any of the seminars that have taken place, then all you need to do really is just sit behind the camera, right, and that way you will not, okay, be in shot. The videos that are taking place this morning and throughout the rest of the day, they will be uploaded to our Skydive The Mag YouTube channel. Yeah, so they will be online. So again, if you do not wish to be put into social media, then remain at the back of the room. Right, through the presentations, we'll probably have some questions and answers taking place. So if that's the case, I have a handheld microphone. So if any of you got any questions, please raise your hand. And whilst I remember, I will hand the microphone to you. You can pose a question. And what that will do is assist the audio for the recording. So when it actually goes online, everything is nice, clear, as opposed to people shouting from the back of the room. Okay, so we'll use the microphone where possible, if I remember, for questions and answers. So we'll start with saying thank you to our sponsors, Romero Sports and Leisure. So over the years now, they have been sponsoring the Industry Day for us. They pay for everything that's happening here today. So again, big thanks. And over the years, again, we've been working in collaboration with United Parachute Technologies. Okay. So at this stage, I would just like to extend our condolences to the company for the recent loss of one of their members of staff. I don't know if you're aware of that. Some of you may have seen him from previous industry days. Kenneth Gadja passed away earlier last year. Okay, so our condolences go to UPT. Right, introductions. Myself, I think most of you know who I am. I'm Jeff Montgomery, Safety and Technical Officer for British Skydiving, but primarily I'm going to be working this morning with Nicola Hobday. Nicola is our compliance officer, okay, and she's going to be doing a very small part towards the end of my presentation on compliance, just to give a little bit of background information as to what's actually taking place out in the field. All right, so Nicola will be doing about 20 minutes work towards the end of my presentation. Right, so the aim of this is to give you an oversight, okay, of how the year of 2022 went, statistic-wise. Talking about malfunctions, we're going to be talking about injuries, okay, and we're going to be comparing that to other years as well. All right, and hopefully, again, that just gives you a bit more of a picture as opposed to being aware of what takes place at your home job zones. So if you're not really traveling around the country too much and you're at home most of the time at your home PTO, then you're probably not aware of some of the stuff that's taking place around the rest of the UK. Okay, so hopefully you're going to get a bit of an oversight from the information that we provide this morning. Right, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at a 12-year period now of the amount of descent. So hopefully those at the back of the room that choose not to be at the front, you can make out the numbers. Can you all see that? Okay, right? So what we have is the total amount of skydives that have taken place over the 12-year period. And as you can see, where we hit 2019, we've got 233,000 descents in 2019, and then we have our wonderful COVID roller coaster. Okay, now as COVID hit, all right, drastically reduces the total amount of jumps carried out, yeah, and then we're back up through 2021, and then back up again through 2022. So over 2022, a total of 258,811 descents carried out in the UK. All right, so that is the breakdown of the category of jumping. So as you can see, the bigger portion of it is our licensed members. Nearly 70% of all descents carried out are by those licensed skydivers. We then break it down. The red part of the pie, 23% is tandem skydiving. Yeah. And then we're breaking it down where we've got the slightly pink color. We've got 2% of category system descents. We're then looking at student freefall is 3%. Now the 3% of student freefall also includes category system freefall descents. And then we're looking at 3% of AFF. Yeah. And parachute displays we have at 0% because the amount of displays carried out in 2022 wasn't enough to make a percentage. Right? It was approximately 950 displays carried out in 2022. All right. Okay, students trained, record high. Okay, that's the highest number of students trained ever. However, a big proportion of that is tandem. Yeah. But that's good. So we're always going to we're going to have a higher number of students trained as opposed to students jumped, which we'll look at in a minute. Yeah. But that is all the students who have gone to a job zone, have registered, and potentially either not jumped due to bad weather conditions or whatever it may be, or just decided not to turn back. A lot of those would probably be tandem. Okay. Right. So students trained, again, as I said, a record high. There is the percentage. The vast majority of those are tandem skydivers. Yeah, tandem descents. And then we've got 3% category system and 2% AFF. All right, so what we'll do now is we're going to break it down specific to what we're here to do, which is solo student parachuting. Now, again, our record high there gives you a bit of an indication as to the amount of students that were jumped. So if we're now looking at 2022, 60,995 of those were tandem. Yeah, and now we're looking at 2,267, our category system, and then 1,195 were AFF students. Yep, so again, remember what I said, students trained, not necessarily reflecting on descents. Right, the breakdown by gender, all students trained. Yep, so if we look at the pie there, all right, 58% male, 42% female. And then we've got 0% of prefer not to say, and then we've got 0% of non-binary. So the breakdown, as you can see, female, including tandem, 26,921 equals 42%. Male, 37,522, 57%. And then we had 7 non-binary, okay, and then 7 prefer not to say. So the numbers are too small to be included as a percentage. 12 of those were tandem. Okay. Right, now we're breaking it down into solo students, category system and AFF. So 2,267 total category system students trained. So we now have 417 of those were female, which gives us the 18%. And then we've got 1,849 is male, 82%. Again, one person identified as non-binary. Yeah. And then on the AFF side of things, slightly lower number, 1,195, 226 is female, 968 is male. Okay. Now, I appreciate that some of this information you might not find relevant, but I believe it's good for you to see where that breakdown is. Okay. So again, the first pie on the left-hand side, that's the category system percentage. So we have 82% male versus 81% male on the AFF. All right, so primarily males are taking up the sport more than females do. Okay. Yeah, so again, 80% female on category system to 19% on AFF. Okay, so there is a slight increase on females taking up the sport through AFF, which is good. Right, so now we're looking at the total amount of students trained on both systems. So the red line is category system, blue line is your AFF. So 2,267 students trained for 2022, but you can see now, okay, where there is a decline. We've got to ignore the COVID roller coaster, okay, because that doesn't really give us a true picture, but overall, there is a decline in category system, right? Which I believe most of you are probably aware of that, okay? All job zones will deal with tandem. Some are not really interested in student parachuting anymore. Okay, so there is a decline, all right, within the category system. And the AFF, as you can see, there is a decline, but it's fairly consistent, all right? So I'm seeing over the next few years, there's probably going to be an overtake from the AFF and a decline from the category system. A lot of the category system students trained and descents made, a vast majority of that come from the JSAT centers. So for those that don't know, JSAT centers are the military parachute centers who train soldiers on adventure training to do static line courses. Right, so now we're looking at the number of descents. So we have, over the 10-year period, you can see student descent is on the decline. Yeah, because again, combination of things, but primarily there is more tandem. However, the COVID roller coaster, we've got to ignore, and then we're now back up to 85, which again is higher than 2019, which is good. Right, so static line descents over the 12-year period, definitely a down trend line. Yeah, so we can see that from what we're seeing on the screen. But again, through COVID and beyond, we're back up. Okay, so there is scope there. People do want to do it, but it's just not as often as they have done throughout the years. Okay, or perhaps not as popular. So we can see there's a 67% decrease in all static line descents made over that 12-year period. Okay, AFF students descents levels 1 to 8. This does not include consolidation descents. Okay, so you can see it's up, down, ignore COVID, and then all of a sudden we're back up. All right, so again, a good uptake of people coming into the sport, taking up AFF, right, and hopefully progressing, staying as members in the association, which is good. So 6,984 AFF descents, levels 1 to 8 in 2022. Right, so now we're going to move into incidents on solo students. So what we've got here, on the left-hand side, you can see a total of 258,000 descents, 811. Out of all those descents, we received a total of 404 incident reports. Okay, now that includes everything here. Sorry, so what I said, we'll focus on the solo students in a minute, but everything here, this is the picture, including displays, tandems, etc. Right, so 38% of those injury reports to a 62% of malfunctional deployment problems. 133 117s, 170 118s, 47 118 alphas, okay, 54 off-landing reports, right, which are included within the 118 and the 118 alpha. Yeah, giving us a total of 404 reports. Right. The green section is still part of that blue pie we've just seen. Yeah, so all we're saying is from the 62%, we now have 13% of that is off-landings. All types of parachuting. Okay, or those reported anyway. Okay, so now we're looking closely to solo student parachuting. 18,685 descents, 85 incident reports received, giving us 58% on the injury. Okay, so now we're starting to see injuries on solo students, yeah? And that is probably not uncommon because first-time jumpers, all right, there is a high injury rate on that respect, yeah? So again, we're going to see more injuries than we are seeing deployment problems or incidents or functions. Okay, so some of the incidents that we've come across reported on a 118. Okay, so malfunctional deployment problems, like I said, there's 42% of that. So we've had 2 double AAD fires. That means both student and instructor had an AAD fire on 2 occasions. Okay. On one of them, the instructor's canopy is downplayed, leading to a broken hip, seriously injured. Okay, and we've had 1 student downplane, again, leading to a broken leg. All right, both separate incidents. Yeah. However, the first incident, both instructor and student got injured. Second incident, only the student got injured. We've had unstable 5-second delays. that is potentially the most dangerous descent that the student will make. It's that first free fall. How many category system instructors in the room? Good. Most of you probably multi-rated AFF instructors. Hands up. Okay. Right. So again, as category system instructors, that is the most dangerous descent that student will make. Okay. So key things to consider there is we've got to make sure that before we are cleared for the first free fall, there is no over progression. Those dummy pulls need to be absolutely consistent and spot on before we clear them for free fall. Right. So we've had a number of line overs, break fires, broken lines, good canopy, cutaways. So again, reported as the student has panicked, all right, not quite sure what to expect, and they're cutting away a perfectly good canopy. Can't locate the toggle, i.e. can't pull, so total malfunction, and use the reserve. We've had loss of control and spinning. Pilot chute entanglements, that is free fall or AFF entanglements with the bridle, yeah, and arm entanglements in suspension lines. We've also had one instructor who left the aircraft early, leaving the student on board. Student remained on board. Okay? And we also have students landing in trees, and we have students landing in gardens. Okay? According to the incident report, the student got disorientated and couldn't find the PLA. Okay. Right, so now we're looking at the risk of malfunction or deployment problem. So based on the statistics that we've got, out of the 42%, okay, we get 1 in every 519 descents that we carry out. Something doesn't go according to plan in terms of malfunction deployment problem. Okay? So, injury. Now this is the serious part now, okay? We've had 5 back injuries, 6 broken legs, fib and tib, 1 broken femur, 3 dislocated shoulders, 19 ankle injuries, including breaks or twists, okay? 1 dislocated toe, 14 sprains, including cuts and bruises. Yep. So those are the injury reports. So that's our 57% of incident reports are injuries. Now, back injuries, some of those students on Talkdown, still on Talkdown, still on the radio, okay, still getting injured. All right. Broken legs, again, all on landing. Broken femur. It just paints that picture, right? That some of the injuries are quite serious. So again, the risk of injury, okay, looks worse now. So every 381 descents, we're injuring a student. Okay. So again, when we look at this bit here, okay, we've got to make sure, especially for the canopy side of things, the canopy control side of things, commands on the radio are the correct commands, okay, and again, ensuring that we're giving them flare, right, at the correct time, okay. Sometimes we know the students can panic, they can flare a little bit early, okay. This sometimes can lead to injuries, all right. Okay, so student off landings over a period of years, starting from 2016. That's when I actually started to record the off landings, all right, without going back through the hundreds of incident reports that we still have, okay? Now, I know as you can see, 2016, we had 28, all right, reported. It's gone down, gone down, gone down, gone down, and then we're back up to 16, right? And this is an estimate, because I'm quite sure that we don't get every single off landing either, okay? So when we compare the two systems between AFF and category system off landings, right, AFF being the blue line, is up, down, 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 and then back up, okay? And again, that's reflection of the amount of AFF descents that we're seeing, all right? AFF descents are on the increase, so therefore it's expected that we're going to get some more off landings, right? But again, we only have 3 static line parachuting reported off landings, yeah? Again, key thing to remember here is every time that student lands off the drop zone, they are higher risk. Every single time. Okay? Now, 16% of the reports received were off landings. Yeah? So when we combine injuries, malfunction and problems, including off landings, for the risk of incident, every 219 descents, something is not going according to plan. That number isn't particularly brilliant. Would you agree? Okay, so we need to be conscious, all right, when we're doing our ground schools, we're doing any progression briefs, yeah, that we're ensuring that the student understands what is required of them. Okay, and if they do not understand or you have any doubt, we keep them on the ground, we rebrief, retrain, then we go again. Okay, some of the reporting issues that we're seeing in the reports is injury reports, fields within the reports not filled in. Please, I'll be grateful is that if you're dealing with any reports, every single field within that report must be completed. Okay, we record that data. Without that data, we haven't got accurate statistics. Okay, so please ensure that you're doing it. Some of the errors we're seeing, incident reports filled in by students. Why are we allowing students to fill in incident reports? I'll tell you why. Either we can't be asked, or you're on the next lift. Yeah, we need to be ensuring that we get factual, correct information, yes, from the student, but they shouldn't be making the report because they can speculate without full understanding of what actually happened on the incident, okay? And again, descriptions, landing injuries. Some of the descriptions that we get in, oh yeah, flared too high on landing. Okay, great. That tells me it was a high flare, but it doesn't tell me whether the student's landing position was correct, doesn't tell me whether the flare was uneven, doesn't tell me anything. So again, the better information that you can put in the description itself, it helps us understand actually what's taking place. Okay, very brief descriptions just means I have to pick up the phone and I have to find out, okay, elaborate please. So that we know, okay, whether that injury, being a serious injury or whatever that may be, is it going to be a claim? The more factual information we've got, the more we can protect the PTO, the more we can protect the instructor. Yep. So, Form 184, guidelines for filling in incident reports. Okay, I've highlighted there in yellow, an injured student or skydiver below B license should not complete the form. Okay, now I'm pretty sure the majority of you know that. It's just quite a prompt reminder, please, to ensure that if you are dealing with the paperwork, it's filled in by the correct person. Right, student talk-down issues that we're seeing. Language barrier. What do we mean by language barrier? Can anybody elaborate? Give me a scenario. Why could it be a language barrier? What's the problem there?
Don't flare yet, and they flare.
Potentially. I'm looking more towards person like that. Liam. Speak up. 100%. Student not understanding English. Okay? Before we train somebody, we have to ensure that that person understands English. And if they don't, we shouldn't be training them. Couple of cases going through now because of the language barrier. So what I'll do, I'll quickly hand over to Nicola in this respect. She's going to do one or two things about Talkdown. Do you want to do it now or do you want to speak later? Okay. Right. No Talkdown on the first descent. Okay. Just landed off the PLA. Now, we train people to fly the parachute. We train them, we tell them what to do. We don't let them wander off. We've got to keep control of that student because we know they are not always going to do as we want them to do. Okay? 2 descents later, same scenario, no communication on the radio, injured. Complacency and poor behavior for more instructors. Okay? We are now getting more and more reports internally from the job zones, from students complaining about the behavior of our instructors. And this is something that we're now going to be addressing, and hopefully Nicola will be talking a little bit about that on her bit about compliance. Okay, so to summarize the behavior, we need to behave accordingly. Okay, we need to be professional, need to be polite, and we must remember the student is always right, within reason. Okay. Okay, insurance. When a claim comes in, okay, the insurance will not automatically protect you as the instructor or necessarily the PTO. Because guess what? The student is also a member, right? So from that claim point of view, if the member is putting a claim in against you as the instructor, it may favor the member because you may have been negligent in your job as an instructor. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so just remember that. The people that you're dealing with are members. Okay? Currently, we have 17 open cases going through the insurance. A vast majority of those will actually close throughout 2022. Okay, so currently 17 are open. Vast majority of the claims that we're getting are tandem because we are doing more tandem. However, in terms of the cost and what's paid out, it's the solo students that are costing the most. There's less of them, but they cost the most. Okay? All right, I'm probably coming quickly before I'm going to hand over. We're probably going to run out of time. So, all we've got here is risk of injury with age. So if you can make out the slides real quick, broken down, okay, into different age groups and the risk. Anybody over the age of 40, you can see now that every 1,000 descents, we're getting about 8 injuries. Yep. Risk of injury through BMI. Yeah. There's your BMI ranges, okay. 20 to 25, I believe, is the right sort of BMI, the right weight for people to be. Anything above 25 and up, you're classed as overweight, very overweight or obese, okay? So again, 30, when we get to 30, that's the obese category. And there is our high bar, all right? Every 1,000 descents, 16 injuries, okay? So this is including, well, sorry, that's just on the solo side there, all right? Now, Dr. John Carter produced this for us, okay? He's very, very specific, very good at this, okay? I was going to ask him to do this bit for me, but he wouldn't answer my call. Okay, so breakdown now between the weight and gender. So, the pink bars depict the female, blue is male, all right? And there you can see where the weight ranges are. Anybody over the 70 kg and female, quite high, okay? And then 80 kg and up, again, high on male, all right? This is risk of injury factors, okay? Now, for the student, okay, our average is 4, okay? So every 1,000 descents, we're getting 4 injury reports, okay, but you can see there, based on the age, it's all included in there. So you can see that. Yes, Stacey.
So if the solo injuries are costing British Skydiving loads of money and BMI is a big factor, would you not consider putting a BMI limit on students? Because I think once they get to the PTO, I think we're all probably scared of offending. So language barriers, high BMI is quite difficult for us to, you know, navigate.
I know, but ultimately what we do is we go more on the weight, don't we? BMI is just a way of seeing things. We don't really go through the BMI. It's more the weight that we go.
But perhaps we should go for BMI as well.
Well, it's something that we can consider, but it's, you know, that some of the information. What I probably forgot to say, the information that we've got from the BMI comes from PIMS, okay? And some of that data is inaccurate because it's filled in incorrectly. Okay, we've got people out there who are just like big giants and people walking around based on what the data is PIMS. Yes, John. Do you want to hand the microphone, Stace?
Thanks. I think Stacey's got a good point, but we discussed this at STC years ago, and STC decided not to have a fixed limit for BMI because, particularly down at Netheravon, some of the people with a high BMI are just very chunky soldiers, aren't they? And they're not the ones we're worried about. We're worried about the ones that are very flabby with poor muscle and are unfit. But the important thing about BMI is if you know it's high risk, you can do something about it. If you know they're 50 years old and at high risk, you can do something about it. You don't have to put everyone on a canopy that's loaded to 0.8 pounds per square foot. If you've got someone who's at high risk, give them a bigger canopy so you can reduce that risk even for the high risk people. Those graphs are really there so you can know who you need to take extra special care of. You don't necessarily have to stop them jumping, just give them a nice big canopy so they get a soft landing anyway.
Thank you, John. Okay, very quickly before I hand over to Nicola. So the message that we want to put across here, okay, is the high risk of age is everybody over the age of 40 for solo skydiving and age of 60 for tandem. Okay, high risk BMI is 30 for solo and tandem. High risk weight is 80 kg for males, 70 kg for females. Okay, right. Higher risk gender is female. Okay, so what do we need to consider? For the solo jumpers, like John just said, we want to be giving them potentially a bigger canopy, all right? If we don't have those canopies, we might want to consider in investing to have the right range of equipment for our students. Transferring to tandem first jump, even if they wish to progress, or transferring into tandem if they have no wish to progress. Okay, tandem is statistically safer, okay? Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll ask for the video to stop. I just want to show you a quick video. So a couple of things we need to consider. Over progression. Let's not put people on level 4 if they're not good enough on level 3. I'm not saying that's the case. It's just a reminder for everybody. AD fires, burbles, and let's think about changing default altitudes for the AAD. Okay, there is a number of PTOs now who have actually increased the AAD firing height for all the student equipment. Why are we going with default? Why are we sticking to 750 feet? That's for you to consider. Okay, I have my default AAD firing height upped. I do not want to be dirty and low. Okay, malfunction drill, we want to change it now for the burble. Something to consider. The reason why we're doing this now is because the fatality that we had back in 2021, okay, where the parachutist had the burble, all right, and then the reserve pilot chute got caught in the burble. That instructor at the time had wings as well. Okay, so again, we need to be considering what the implications of carrying out a reserve drill without a main, okay, and how the burble affects the deployment of the reserve. I'm going to hand over to Nicola now. Do apologize for dragging on a little bit. So hopefully we can get this done.
So I don't know if many of you have met me before. I'm a couple of familiar faces. So I'm an independent and I work for British Skydiving. And I am looking at improving people's behaviours and the ethics and the culture in which we skydive. So as skydiving progresses and things change, we are looking at how we can make it better for all those that partake in skydiving. And one of the things I'm trying to do is change that culture. Change the way that we behave at those drop zones. And so the rest of the cases are all based off behaviour. Okay? So I've got an exercise for you all to do. So I want you to work in groups. That's quite a big group. So because we're going to run out of time, if this area here can work in a group, 2 groups there and 2 groups there, and if you can join behind. Yep. I want you to think about this. This is the scenario. Do you want me to read it? Can you all read that, or do you want me to read it out? During the pre-jump check, prior to moving towards the door, an AFF student sitting on the floor, knees bent and all facing the same way. Obviously that depends on what plane you're in. Instructors have to check the chest straps and the leg straps on the harness to ensure that they are tight. So it's your final checks. Instructors face the student to carry out the pre-jump checks and put their knee between the student's legs to carry out these checks. I'm sure you're familiar with that procedure in checking that all those straps are correct before they jump out of the plane. Okay. What I want you to think about is How do you do that at your drop zone? I mean, I realise that it might be a different plane. You might not be sitting on the floor. You might be sitting on benches. What do you think your position is as an instructor? And if you were the student, what are you expecting? Okay, I know it says 10 minutes, but you're only going to have 5 minutes. And I want you to get some key points together. Okay? So you've got 5 minutes to talk about those things, and then you're going to feed back to the rest of the group. I'll give you some pens and some paper so you can write your ideas down. Let's start with the group at the back. What's your thoughts? What have you talked about?
We didn't really answer the questions, we just spoke about it in general terms. But really, we thought here the key thing is to explain to a student on the ground before you even get in the plane or in your rig, you know, what the scenario is, the importance of safety checks, that it's for all of our benefits. Yeah, how busy it is on the plane with 15 of us strapped in there, and notice for students that people are doing flight line checks on each other. This is not something that is unexpected, or wouldn't be something that's unexpected by the time we get to altitude. And if you haven't done all those previous things, then you should have done those things. It should be part of the ground school. What we do is checks on the plane.
So warning the student that a pre-jump check is going to happen in the aircraft is part of the ground school, and that was something that we would do. So they would expect to have a pre-jump check. We decided it's probably less of a problem now with the introduction of more benches in the aircraft, so less of the students sitting actually on the aircraft floor and having to kneel in between the student and the door to prevent them getting towards the door before we're ready to dispatch them.
Okay, thank you.
Right, there we go. I think the most important thing we said is obviously to do the checks, and that the student is probably going to be wanted to be checked for that reassurance, so it's making sure we do it. And if you know the scenario there, and you know the sensitive areas, is just being very careful on how you're doing it. You know, and I'd come up with the example on a tandem, and there's this category system AFF. You know, you're checking a chest strap. Can you put my hands on your chest strap? You know, so there's ways of getting around it if it's a certain, you know, leg straps or whatever. So just being careful about that, and perhaps briefing them, but doing the checks, and the student wants that reassurance. So we've got to not be swayed by kind of by worry. You know, they need that check and we need to give it, and just being a bit careful about certain scenarios. But that was kind of our point, I think.
Okay, thank you.
It's important to do the pre-jump check, obviously. So as long as during your aircraft drills they've all been briefed, that you know what to expect. It is going to be crowded in there. The aircraft are full. Explain why it's important to do it, and as long as you've got a system, so every student's getting treated the same, I can't really see the issue.
So I'm not going to do the second part because I've got to rush off. But I think you've already answered that with with the answers that you've just given me. Okay. So you've kind of done the second part in the first. Has anybody got any questions?
I think what we're trying to say, and you all know what it is that you need to do, we're all given the right information on the ground. I think you just need to be a little bit conscious that when we are given that information, to be a little bit specific, as that there will be contact. And contact is part of safety. You have to put your hands around the body of that student to make a safety check of the equipment, whether it's on the ground, in the aircraft. And as long as you tell them that that's taking place, we shouldn't be getting any complaints. So you've all got it. We just need to be a little bit conscious about how we deal with people that don't know you as an individual, and you don't know them because we've just met them on ground school and we're now taking them in the air.